just got the letter in the mail today. I meant to bring it tonight, but I forgot it.
Okay, well, we'll put the name up for consideration.
Because they're short people, so. I think there's 3 other people.
Would you like it printed? I have it on my computer.
I haven't asked.
I just don't have. Do you have an address?
It's in there. I wanna say, I'll look it up.
Or maybe the veteran.
See what you got. Thanks for making that charge, the draft charge.
No problem. I hope it was all right.
Oh, you do.
Yeah, well, you can. It's a piece.
Because I can't hurt all the house.
Yeah.
Oh, do you need to do that?
No, no, I'm good. I'm just wearing it until I'm
EDC, there's two, Dewey Baker
covered for
and,
traffic. That's why.
Everybody, just so you know, we're live.
yeah,
And,
see what, so they did their homework.
Would you like me to pull this out?
You know you're lying, right?
Yeah, it's where I, okay, you know, I can just run it down.
Just enough.
No, it's fine. Okay.
Thanks, Glenn. Did you hear all that? They still are a good group of people. It's your stuff. Good, because I have enough stuff for the lab. That's what's called a hot mic. Yes, it is. Things get captured in hot mics. As you know. Yes. Never run away with hot mic. Hot mics.
Yeah, we're not putting both, just Jay.
I'm trying to review. This is as of last year. Yes.
Do you have the in-sale address?
It's not, it's in payroll.
What I can do here, what am I doing there?
Yeah, the only person registered at that address is Leslie. As of last April. But it's 127, so that's the point.
I'd like to call the meeting to order for Monday, March 7th, 2022. And before we start, I'd like to observe a moment of silence for those in Ukraine. Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For the agenda review, we're going to be removing the executive session, item number 14. And we're going to be moving new business 11B, the presentation for the town staff regarding the Sue Grossman Greenway extension. Is Jim here?
She's not arrived yet.
Okay. We will be moving that up to number, we'll move it to 4.
Okay.
Anything else? Do we need a vote on the agenda changes?
moving on to number 4, discussion on cannabis regulations. Is there any public comment? Brian?
Brian Sunday, 152 Spencer Hill Road. I'm not sure where we are in the process. I don't necessarily know what all the process-related items are, or the agenda going forward. But I'm just hoping this Board of Selectmen can do 2 things. Number 1, if you haven't already, I would just love to see a discussion or some commentary that would provide the public information on where all of you stand individually on this issue of the commercialization of marijuana and whether or not we should have it in town. And then point 2, I would love if this Board of Selectmen, and this is where the process comes in, I was unclear on how the process would work. If this body would send this issue to a town-wide vote, if you don't have the power to send this issue to a town-wide vote, I would love for you to help lead the petition effort or whatever that process is. So those are my 2 general requests. So thank you, appreciate it.
Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please give your name when you come up here.
David LaPointe, 11 Hillside Avenue, Winchester, Connecticut. I agree with Mr. Sunday. I believe that you good selectmen have either the opportunity yourselves to stop this or to permit it. And you know, if you are going to do a Punch's pilot, in effect, of washing your hands of it and leaving it up to the public, then so be it. I think that that would be the route to go. But I also believe that you do have the authority to say we don't want it in this town as duly elected selectmen. And I think that would be the right course to do. I agree wholeheartedly with what Mr. Sunday said, that you know, we still do not know where you stand on it, and the good townspeople of this town need you to take the lead, if you will. Some of you have expressed to me some of your opinions on it. I don't know all of your opinions on it, but it is a crucial issue for the future of this town, especially for all of the children in the town. So I hope that we either have you voice your opinion as where you each stand on it, or we go to town referendum, and I will be happy to assist in getting signatures for that, because it's being done in other towns. The city of Waterbury, the mayor has already said if the aldermen don't rule on it, then he's leaving it up to the voters. So it can be done. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, so this has been a difficult decision with many thoughts. Myself and other members of the board. Personally, I'm against it. I don't think that we should be using an illegal drug that the federal government describes as illegal. I don't think that we should be profiting off of it, but I also understand that it is legal in Connecticut. There are some things in the regulations that I don't like, but as it's been passed by the state legislature, one way or another, it's coming to town. I've spoken to many people. Some are for, some are against. We've received some comment from the public via email, which we've read into the minutes 2 or 3 meetings ago. Brian has spoke here a couple times, David has spoke here a couple times. It's a difficult decision, and I also realize that the revenue from this could increase the grand list by 1.5 to 3%, which is a substantial amount of money. Do I think that there'll be problems? Yes, but we'll have to face those when we get to it. So I'm going to ask the board to vote to send it to planning and zoning to craft regulations regarding cannabis sales with restrictions on not allowing it in the Main Street corridor. Any further comments? Is someone willing to make that motion?
So I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
When you say Main Street corridor, you mean
Route 44.
Main Street or South Main, North Main,
The Route 44 corridor.
the Route 44 corridor?
So that would be South Main, Main.
Are you
West
taking
Main.
it down to Ledgebrook?
I would go from the college.
Yeah,
to
from the
west end.
medical center to the Jehovah Witness temple.
183 north?
Yes. 183 south to 183 north.
That's
But Todd, you're not suggesting anything for North Main Street,
No, Main Street, Route 44.
just east-west?
Yes. Any further discussion?
yeah, it just, I don't, I'm thinking Main Street from the green down to the library.
The East End Green to the library. That's fair.
The only reason I say that is I just remember there's a local retailer who used to have a business up by the Route 8. Because coming off Route 8 and going north up Route 8,
Okay.
and just the exposure that they had in that one section and the traffic that's there versus traffic that would not come through and up that corridor. And even going out west to the out-of-town people on the west side. So if everybody's okay with that from
Got that from East
where
End Park
the college is, the college out
to
to,
the library, to here to the library.
Well,
or the church on the corner, Spencer.
rather than saying the college, why don't we just say from,
Pointer Center. Route 8 entrance.
from the East End Park to the library,
Yes.
Monroe?
Or that church, Spencer Street, just past
The
Spencer.
Second Congregational Church.
So that would be, yeah, the Division Street. Anyone else? on the
And
board?
Todd, just to clarify, what you're asking here is that the zoning board of appeals goes ahead and establishes the regulations.
Planning and
that-
zoning.
Planning and
Planning and Zoning Commission, establish the regulations that would prohibit it from that area,
Correct,
but not touch any place else in town.
correct.
They already have some regulations
Right,
because of the medical marijuana.
for the medical.
Right.
You know, I believe they already have regulations in spaces like that already, so.
Correct.
Has PZC had any discussion about this yet?
They had preliminary discussions 2 meetings ago, I think.
Yeah, they had some preliminary discussions on it, and that is, of course, what initiated, or to an extent, that's what initiated conversations here, is they're waiting for input. And I believe they even have some definitions written up, and they've been conducting a review of what it would take to implement policies and regulations around this, but they need to know what the regulations will prohibit. And here it is.
All in favor? Opposed? 6-1, motion carries. Moving on to the Sue Grossman Greenway Extension. Jim, Mark?
Hi, Bart Clark from the Department of Public Works, and Gary Grove from Cardinal Engineering. Gary's Cardinal Engineering has designed the trail. We have a quick PowerPoint just to get you, everyone, clear as to where we are and what we're proposing as part of the trail. And so we'll just dive right into the PowerPoint.
Do you need the lights up?
If it's easier for everybody to read with the lights off, would it be easier?
That's pretty easy to see.
Okay. The trail is going to be, a segment of the trail is going to be constructed from the end of the existing trail, Lansing Drive, up to the Connecticut Department of Motor Vehicles. The trail is being funded by a grant from the Connecticut DEP, what the agreement calls a CPAP grant. Exactly what the initials mean, they didn't really tell me. So getting used to the equipment. So, again, here's the,
Need to talk into the microphone.
this is a map that's off the Torrington website that shows the extent of the current trail, which begins at Harris Road and goes up to Lansing Drive. And then from, that's in the red, and the blue is the proposed section that goes from Lansing Drive up to the Connecticut DMV driveway. You know, the whole trail has been part of a cooperative approach with the city of Torrington. And there's future plans to extend the trail up to Willow Street in Winstead, and Torrington has plans to extend it further south into Torrington itself. So we here in Winstead or Winchester are working on finding additional monies for that additional trail from the DMV up to Willow Street, but nothing concrete is in place just yet. So.
Josh, is that control of the TV or the computer?
Control the TV, but you all can't see this, or the selectmen can't see this, but it's a very different picture, what we're looking at on the computer versus what we're looking at on the TV. Do you try to remove an HDMI from the back end?
1, 2, 3.
Sometimes the computers like to decide which screen it's gonna use.
It's just playing this.
That's somebody's vacation home, right?
Down the bottom, maybe your PowerPoint. There you go.
Guess I gotta go back for remedial training. Okay, so these these are the plan set that the Cardinal Engineering has put together. And there's, what I've done in this PowerPoint is just include six page, the sheets that show just the trail that's being constructed right now. We're not gonna go into a lot of detail, but we just wanted to go through a quick overview of what the design plans is, and Gary, interrupt me if you wanna discuss anything in particular, so.
Could you discuss how you had to move the trail a little bit because of wetlands? Because it's, this is a longer period of time than we had expected with the design work, but I think you had moved some of the trail for wetland purposes and to make it easier. Could you talk about that a little bit,
We
please?
had to move the trail for two reasons, in and out. One is for wetlands, to minimize wetlands impact. And the wetlands impact, not only the local state wetlands, but also federal core wetlands. And that's the big item. I think the problem you had with the last, taking on the big chunk, you had a lot of wetland impact of the core wetlands, and the Corps was gonna make the town pay money in lieu of renewing wetlands or making wetlands. So the whole project was scaled back to a reasonable size, and we were able to get the impacts to the federal wetlands to below what they call a self-verification permit, 5,000 square feet. It doesn't mean you're gonna run into the issue with the core wetlands in the future when you finish up the project to Willow Street. You're still gonna have to pay the Corps money sooner or later on the project, but right now, at least we'll get this initial 3,300 extension of the trail. The other issue was, as you all know, the trail follows the railroad, the old railroad embankment, and it pretty much parallels the Still River. And the Still River has a floodplain, a FEMA-regulated floodplain. So in order to manage the amount of area taken up by the trail and removing that area from the flood storage of the floodplain, it's all FEMA requirement. Deep had told us that if you can get it to a zero net, wash, we're not taking any more, we're not giving any. And that's what we got to right now. We're at a net, I say zero.
Essentially, yeah.
Essentially zero. The permits up at Deep right now are being reviewed, but all indications are they will issue the flood management certificate for the project because we satisfy that criteria. So yes, we had to go in and out somewhat, up and down the embankment of the old Route 8.
So this slide is showing our sheet 6, which is the beginning section of the trail. Lanson Road, the Lanson Drive parking area is in here, and the existing trail comes off the parking area and back down toward Torrington in this direction. And this portion in here is the new trail. That's the first pedestrian bridge, what we call Structure 4. Oops. And then it crosses the driveway that goes back to the lightning rod factory, and there's 3 residents in the back. And then it parallels the USA hauling driveway, goes across the USA hauling driveway, and then heads out following the USA hauling driveway. Structure 4 is kind of an interesting structure. You can see here that it's an old railroad trestle. And we have some other pictures in it, but Gary, do you have anything else you'd like to talk about on this slide?
There is a plaque on that railroad trestle, which dates the trestle back to 1908, I believe. I think it's the Pennsylvania Steel Company. So what we're gonna do with that old trestle is we're gonna pick it up and move it off to the side and place it on a stub abutment. We're gonna take stones from structure number 5 further up the river, make a small abutment, sit it on top, and use it as a piece of history of the old railroad. It's in pretty good shape, to tell you the truth, for its age.
Yeah, We chose not to use the existing abutments for the railroad trestle because they're in very poor condition. They're falling apart, and to try to repair those, we'd end up having quite a bit more wetland disturbance, to facilitate the repair of the existing abutments. Having these, the new bridge in gives us more clearance for the flood to pass underneath the bridge, so it is a real plus. You can see, on a frequent basis, the bottom of the bridge is flooded. So having a little bit more space there going over top of the bridge and over top of the existing trestle is beneficial for the flood flows. So. And sheet 7, this is sheet 7. This just follows along the USA hauling parking area, and it gets us to structure 5. You can see in this area here is where there's a little grass swale down in here. We cut into the existing grade here in this area to allow for what they call compensatory flood storage. And wherever we're filling, in order to get over structure 5, we had to build up a ramp to get to the bridge because the state wanted us to stay above the floodplain. So by adding the fill here, we took the fill away from here. So that's that net zero. I took all your thunder away, didn't I, Gary? So,
That's all right.
so, is there anything you want to talk about here? Or I really ruined it for you. So it's details of structure 5.
I mean, structure 5 and structure 4 will look similar. They'll be similar looking structures. They're gonna be trusses. They'll be prefabricated, brought onto the site, assembled and put up in one piece. As I mentioned earlier, all the stones, the existing old stone abutments from this location will be brought down to structure 4, where we're gonna set up the old historic trestle. What's this? It's just a continuation north of structure 5, heading up to the first driveway crossing. The driveway crossings have been a challenge for this project. If you, anybody who's used the trail south in Torrington, it's at pretty much always at railroad grade, and any cross roadway or driveway was always at the same elevation as the railroad used to be. These driveways that cross the railroad in Winchester were actually built up higher than a railroad embankment. So we had to get up them. Since there are existing driveways, we have to pass over the existing driveway. We couldn't cut the driveway down because it's too close to Route 8. The slope wouldn't work. So all the grades for the trail had to meet the driveways at existing elevations, which was a challenge because not only is this a pathway for bicyclists or walkers, but we had to make it ADA accessible. And that meant a 5% maximum grade. So we had to work it all into what we had available. And we were in and out between the railroad, Eversource right-of-way, and the old Route 8, trying to use up and down the side slopes. Again, this, is that another Canavo driveway? Is that the same? The next one up? Okay. As you can see in the bottom, in the profile, the line on the bottom, the light line on the bottom is the existing grade, or the existing elevation of the ground surface, and the heavier line above it is the proposed grade of the trail itself. And that's where we had to fill it in just to get up to meet the driveway. So as I mentioned, 5% max on the grades for ADA accessibility, and it really caused an issue trying to get all this put in and try to minimize, again, between the heavy line and the light line, that's fill, and that's fill within the floodplains. That's the trade-off we had to play with on the flood management certificate. Right.
You know, we're standing down here on the railroad bed, and the truck, yellow truck up there is on the wood products driveway, so there's quite an elevation difference. And, this photograph shows it a little bit closer to the driveway itself.
It's the next section going up north, too far. Again, we try to match the existing grade as much as possible. In this area, we had to raise the trail somewhat just to keep it out of the normal flow of the Still River, to keep it dry during normal conditions. More than likely, this section is gonna get flooded if you ever get a heavy flow. But like everything else in that, the Still River Valley, I mean, it's gonna flood. Can't stop it.
There's beavers there too.
Pardon?
The beavers are raising the level too.
I haven't really looked into where, if they are or not. And this is the terminus end at the motor vehicle's driveway. Again, we have to come up to meet the driveway, and it's gonna end right at the driveway. The new project is approximately 3,300 feet long. It's not super long, but it's a nice little extension to what's out there now. And when you get the remainder done up to Willow Street, it'll be a nice run of the whole. Now, from what I understand, the long-range plan is to connect all the way down to Ansonia on this project. Just like you have that trail from New Haven up to Southampton, New Mass, the Cheshire Trail. They want to do something like that here. So that's the long-range plan. And a lot of it is done down in the southern part between Ansonia and Waterbury.
So there's a number of properties that are impacted by the trail. As you saw, Canavo's driveway, the driveway that goes to the electric lightning folks, and the three houses out on Lanson Drive. And you know, again, there's a number of properties. The 185 is USA Hauling. 173 is Canavo's property. 167 is Wood Products. 165 is Contractor's Office, and then the Department of Motor Vehicles and the State Highway Garages are right there. So, there, you know, what Gary and his crew has done is tried for the most part to minimize any impact to those driveways, so that you know, the driveways that are there are going to be the driveways that are going to be there after the job is constructed. Do you want to say anything about the driveways?
No.
Driveways are driveways. But, you know, we certainly didn't want to change or impact the driveways.
Obviously, each driveway will be considered like a road crossing, so all the proper signage and both for the trail users and for the driveway users will be in place. There will be, pardon?
Repeat it.
The driveways will be considered a road crossing, so all the traffic control, be it signs and or lines on the pavement, crosswalks will be in place. So it's just like a regular crossing a city street. So anybody using the driveway should yield to those within the path, as traffic now has to yield to pedestrians in the roadway. And now all the signs will be preempted or put in ahead of time, so people will understand that there's going to be a trail up front ahead of you.
So we just where do we sit in the process, and what's the next steps for us to take? You know, we're waiting for final flood management certification from the Connecticut DEP. We're still working with the Division of Rails to get the final agreement in place to get the DOT's permission to use the rail. And Eversource also has a license agreement, which they're nearly complete, nearly have completed the final draft, so we should have that in hand very soon. We hope to be out to bid sometime mid-March in the next couple of weeks. But we're kind of hedging our bet a little bit on the floodplain management certification and the DOT Division of Rail. We'll have to judge the bid date based on our progress with those two items. So even if we have to delay a couple of weeks, construction should start sometime early summer. Assuming that we get attractive bids when we go through the whole process, and then do you figure what, five months for the project?
End of the construction season, which is December 1st. We should be done. I mean, that depends on lead time on some of the bigger items, like the two bridges we're proposing. Contractors are running into real problems now with lead time on materials. I just received bids today on a project in Burlington for a bridge replacement. And we had a 24-inch water main replacing from the city of London sitting the grit right next to it. The lead time to get 200 feet, 24-inch ductile iron pipe was 10 months, which messes up the whole schedule for the bridge. So we're trying to figure out what to do with that. It's just the way things are right now.
So that's the end of our presentation. Just in case people don't know why it's called Sue Grossman Trail. The trail was dedicated to Sue Grossman back when it was first opened. People around here probably know Sue Grossman better than I might have, but apparently she was very active in the big community in Torrington. So.
Any other? Okay.
What are you putting to bid out for? What's the surface gonna look like? Are we going to have fencing around everything?
The surface will be a bituminous concrete surface with stone dust or shoulders. There will be fencing where we need fencing, not the entire
Right.
trail will be fenced, but any place where you have grade differential, there will be a 3-rail fence installed. Normal safety factors you find on any trail.
So it'll be the same as the existing Sue Grossman?
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
Thank you.
It will be all the aesthetics and treatment will be a continuation of the existing Sue Grossman. You don't want to make the change right now. Yes.
Most people drive to the trail. Will there be parking allowed at motor vehicle parking lot, or is that an issue?
Well, we approached the Connecticut DMV to get permission to park, and they weren't really receptive, but they wouldn't say they didn't say that they would kick people out if they parked there. So it's just another state bureaucracy that we couldn't get a good, quick answer from them. We've approached a couple of landowners just north of the DMV to see if we can't get permission to park along the side of the driveway, but that's still in progress, and we'll have to consider that as part of the next phase of the project and not part of this phase.
Bart, there was a large parking lot where the sports dome used to be. Has anyone approached them?
Yeah, we tried to get, we started discussions with them about having a parking trail in the driveway that they used to have that went out to Torrington Road, so that people would park pretty close. I know it doesn't seem like it should matter to people who are gonna make a 4-mile walk, but they felt that the parking area so far back toward the sports dome was too far away from the trail, so.
Wouldn't it be worth it for us as a board just to have Todd and Josh write a letter to DMV and ask for permission?
It wouldn't hurt.
I mean, we could just ask as a board and as a town, officially as a town, outside of Public Works, and ask for that. Because I know people park their state cars that they use along the driveway in, but to park down over by the riverside, so maybe we can ask for a specific. And they also do like testing on the backside too. That might be why they're hesitant, so maybe if you ask specifically for, certain spaces up by the little river.
The northwest corner by the river.
Yeah, that one's, yeah. Yeah. And then, you know, you and Josh ask for that.
Do we have a line item in our budget for maintenance of the trail, the existing trail?
It's under recreation, I think.
Recreation?
I think recreation takes care of it.
So currently, we do not have anything specific for trail maintenance. What we do now is we tag team it with the rec department. Their people do the small stuff, weed whacking, trimming, you know, fence repairs, that kind of stuff. Public Works goes in with the roadside mower. We do just the bigger, heavier stuff, and that's how we've done it in the past. As this trail lengthens, the responsibilities get more. That's gonna become an issue. In recent years, or maybe last year was the first year, I think, Torrington started plowing and sanding. And all of a sudden, everybody wants it here. And there's some serious pros and cons to doing that we're still working through. Some of it's staffing, some of it's liability. Some of it's got to do with, you know, do you wanna put all those, you know, the sand and salt right there as close to the river as we are versus having places for snowshoers and cross-country skiers. So, you know, we're weighing a lot of different factors in that, and we haven't really come up with an exact plan of what we wanna do and how it's gonna be funded, but your point is wise. We do have to think ahead as far as the maintenance goes long-term.
Yeah, there's some fencing down also that needs to be repaired, so, yeah, that answered my question, oh, thanks.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I was just down on a legacy trail, and they had a big tent out. Do they have in Torrington, do they have a Friends of the Sue Grossman Trail,
Yes,
a nonprofit?
yes, same with Winstead Trails, Torrington Trails, it's a nonprofit through the YMCA.
So maybe you can start looking to them for, you know, some help as well.
We've been waiting for this for a long time. I know it's 4 years, and I know there were engineering problems way in the beginning. We got that straightened out. I think I was a little disappointed that it's just a small segment. I was thinking, oh, with this report, we were gonna complete the whole project. I think it's great, and I'm glad we're getting a small segment done, but what's the idea and plan for when we're gonna have it finished? I'm talking about economic development, and this has been going on for, I know, at least 4 years. Any thoughts or any comments on that?
Well, I know that Josh and the Public Works Department have been working together at making applications for various number of grants, the Community Challenge Grant, the congressional
Dedicated, the congressional dedicated funds. So since I've started, I can't speak for some of the applications that Bob might have put forward in conjunction with Public Works, but we have put forward 2 separate grants. We're still, one of them was denied by Congress, and we're still waiting to hear back from the state DECD about whether 1.9 million would be allocated to the town. Or I should say 75% of 1.9 million, well, there's a match component to finish the Sue Grossman Greenway. Of course, if that's denied, and there is a round 2 of the Communities Challenge grant, so it's my hope that it's approved in round 1. If it's not, then we'll go back in round 2. We'll adjust whatever they ask us to adjust, which might, at this point, given rising prices, include an adjustment in our estimated price of the Greenway. But my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is that that's really what we're waiting on. Is just we need money in the bank, and it's almost $2 million to finish.
We need easements as well, and those easements should continue from this day on till we get money, because if we can't wait for easements, and that's what was told to us before was the holdup. So, or none were even, I don't even think were obtained, except for I got one, but you know, those easements need to be worked on from this point going forward, or we'll never have the extension done.
Wasn't there, Bert, lots of engineering done all the way right up to Raleigh Street?
Yes.
There was.
Isn't that still available?
Well, it was actually the engineering was done all the way up to Willow Street. And the reason why we didn't use any of the engineering was because the engineering that they did got us in trouble with the Army Corps of Engineers. And we had so much disturbance within the wetlands that the Army Corps of Engineers was looking for mitigation of the disturbance that we were doing in the wetlands. And that mitigation, we had a couple of choices of how to handle that mitigation. One was establish conservation reserve areas, or create or do a fee in lieu of. You know, you pay them a fee for the disturbance, and they create wetlands or preserve wetlands in other locations. And that fee in lieu of was over $250,000, which, you know, was a lot of money to the budget that we had available. So we felt that, hey, let's refocus our ideas and our design concepts that are in a way that's gonna be able to allow us to make use of this money without having to work with the Army Corps of Engineers for that what we feel is an excessive mitigation effort, so.
Well, will any of those engineering works, I think we had like $1.5 million that we spent out for engineering work.
No, you didn't spend 1.5 million. 1.55 is the amount, 1.55 million is the amount of the grant. And we spent a portion of that on the engineering efforts before Gary's firm got involved.
And a
With
portion of
another
that-
firm.
A portion of
Correct.
that also goes to Torrington.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, okay.
So in the engineering work that's still remaining to be done between the Department of Motor Vehicle Building and Raleigh Street, is that gonna have to be all brand-new engineering work?
I think we're gonna have to take another look at it. Whoever gets that project, whether we get it or not, whoever gets it has to look at it, and they're gonna have the same problem of trying to minimize the wetland impact, the core wetland impact. If you don't, you're still gonna end up paying $250,000 of core for obliterating wetlands. If you don't wanna pay that amount of money, then next engineer's gonna have to fine tune and move things around like we had to do to try to minimize the impact. I think there's gonna be a major difficulty in doing that because of the amount of wetlands. It's still a long stretch up to Willow Street. So, the key is gonna try to minimize that amount as small as possible and use whatever land we have to move things in and out again. So, I mean, it's gonna be
Another 10, 15 years. That's what it's gonna be before that's finished. I have a couple of questions regarding this particular way that you presented. The parking area at Lanson Road, sometimes it gets plowed, sometimes it doesn't. It's a messy area. And where the trail ends there, and where you're now gonna pick it up over the brook, are you gonna do anything with that parking area? Is that part of a renovation area?
There's no plans to improve the parking area above what's there already.
So the trail will connect through that parking area to where you're extending it?
No, we don't have to go through that parking area. You have to go, if you're gonna start on the trail from that parking area, you have to walk to the trail. But the trail will not go through the parking area. The trail is behind the parking area to the east, and, you know, follows the old railroad right of way. It does not go through the parking area, cross over the new Lanson Drive Bridge, and then pick up the right of way after there. It's all behind the river there.
Okay. And the other question has to do with utilities. This is a perfectly good time to bring more underground utilities since you're digging this place up. Is there any utilities that need to be brought in?
Oh, they're planning on doing that at the other end,
No, to where? To Torrington?
in Willow.
I'm asking about between,
I think I can answer your question. So, if we knew what development was planned for that south end of the trail, whether it's up on the mountain or across the river, if you knew what was planned, and you could size utilities appropriately, the right diameter water pipes, right diameter and type of sewer pipes, now would be the time to do it. there's no plans on the table, so you wouldn't have a prayer of guessing. You know, you'd either oversize something or undersize it, and then to invest that kind of coin up front with that kind of a risk would just not be wise. As someone over here just stated, we do have a pretty good idea of what the utility needs are gonna be from Public Works heading north towards town. And when we get to that section, we will plan on putting those in, you know, ahead of time or, you know, at the same time. And we've got separate grant money applications being applied for that. But that is, you know, the area we're working on now is so far out of our ability to forecast what's needed. It would just be silly to try that.
Jim, is there any underground down to Lansing area and from MVD down to Lansing? There's nothing there now. It's all,
Nothing. The only utilities are overhead. You've got electric and,
Right.
you know, telephone, cable, that kind of stuff. There's no water, no sewer, nothing underground.
and just to help me remember, do we bring any water or sewer down to MVV?
Yeah, DMV is on town water.
And
It-
sewer?
No, it's not on sewer.
Not on sewer, okay.
Any other questions from the board?
So if you don't have any questions, I do have, you know, so beyond having this information hearing tonight, we did send out a mailer to each of the adjacent property owners, just to give them a little extra heads up and let them know about the meeting here tonight. I only had two real questions that were brought up. One was what's gonna happen at each of the driveways, and Gary addressed that. You know, the profiles are gonna stay the same, it's really only gonna be signage. And then the other one was, you know, an area down by, across Lansing Drive, they were concerned with all of the truck traffic and pedestrians, and I think more during construction, you know, and just not wanting to be, you know, disrupted any more than necessary. So I just assured them that all of that stuff, all of the interruptions now, it's not like when we did Lansing Bridge where we had the whole thing closed. Any disruptions are gonna be very minor, and very short-lived. So those were the only two comments. Each of those people, in fact, were upbeat about the project, and they were more curiosity questions than issues. So that's all I've got.
We have citizens' comments after the next item, and there may be some questions from some of the audience. We're gonna move, thank you, gentlemen. We're gonna move on to approval of minutes from our regular meeting on February 22nd. Anyone have any?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting on February 22nd, 2022.
I'll second.
Got that, Jonathan's got a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Citizens' comments. The Board of Selectmen welcomes public comments. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes or less and may speak only once this round. Please give your name and address. Anyone like to speak?
Yes, John Weird, 16 Superior Street, Winchester, Connecticut. I don't know if you've seen what's going on, but the last week starting, they had on the CGA 176 about solar panels, and they want to revise it so that certain areas can have higher than what's legally up there now. So if, like, say you had a 1 megawatt, they want to be able to just go to 2 megawatt or 3 megawatt. And this particularly affects certain schools in this state that already have solar, but the solar doesn't cover the total electrical budget at the school. And that's why this is primarily interesting. And also some towns want a greater amount of solar. And instead of being cut off at, say, 2 megawatt or 1 megawatt or 100 kilowatt. And they want to be able, so if you're interested in learning more about it, get a hold of Jay Case or Senator Minor, and they can fill you in on it, or you can also probably go to the CGA 176 bill. The other thing is, there's been a lot going on with the EV vehicles, electric vehicles, And they've come up with some new regulations and new articles and about the EVs and the plug-in EVs. And they're allowing a higher rate for putting the charging station in at your house. Plus, they'll also put in worth of $500 of installation cost. They still have it in there where you get a lower registration for your vehicle if you charge at home. And you can also be tied in to Eversource, and you will get electricity break on your bill. I've heard that Eversource is due to go up by 4 cents a kilowatt, starting sometime this summer. I don't know when. And it may not materialize. It all depends on Pura. So that's all I have to say.
Before you, please, can I ask John? John, I'd like to ask you a question regarding the electric stations over by the bank. I've been told that a couple times if it rains and then it freezes, it's hard to use them. They get water in them, they freeze up, and then they can't be used. And so when we've had rain and freezing and rain again, is there something that could be put over those? Do you know? Has that become an issue? Is anybody else concerned about that? Or else, is it possible to move those underneath the drive-in window areas to keep them out of the rain?
Well, most of them are out in the wide open, but I suppose they could be moved, but I haven't heard anybody say that they have been having any trouble.
Yeah, I've gotten some comments regarding that when it freezes, it can't be used.
I haven't heard of that, but.
Maybe there's just like, they make so many of them, maybe there's just like a little roof, like an umbrella type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not like umbrella material, but.
Well, you know, if it's gonna be used, and I'm just wondering how much difficulty it would be to move it under the,
A lot. Because when we put them in, we had you have the installation costs and
It's like
everything.
$10,000.
And they looked at the best place to put it in terms of where the electricity already is within the building.
yeah.
So it
Well-
might be better to put a little hood on them.
Costs money to dig underground.
Well, I understand that, but I just wondered, maybe a covering or something, just to make sure that they don't get frozen up and not used. You haven't heard anything from that?
No, but I suppose there is some kind of cover that can go over those. I don't know whether Bob has that, or town has that catalog that Bob ordered them out of, or maybe Mark Douglas.
Oh, something to just be aware of.
I haven't heard any problems up at the medical facility. They're being used every day up there.
Are they used overnight up there?
Huh?
Are they used overnight up there?
I don't think so, because they're usually out of there pretty much by 9 o'clock.
Yeah. I thought I've seen some cars over here overnight.
Well, they could be. I mean,
That's a private parking lot. This isn't. This is ours is a public, so that's a private parking lot.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind having more of them out there, but I wouldn't want them the same rate that they are now.
Well, I think Stop and Shop is going to be installing a bank of them.
Well, they're supposed to have the Teslas, the bank of Teslas. Right now in Canaan, they have what they call Tesla tailgate parties.
Thank you, John.
Sure.
Anyone else like to speak? David?
David Lapointe, 11 Hillside Avenue. I'm speaking in regards to the ordinance regarding the exemption of the proposed tax assessment for veterans, which, codifies so that the town now has an ordinance in order to give the local option, which is under state statute. I want to say that, I think it's a move in the right direction, and I was happy that the Board of Selectmen, moved to do this ordinance, and I understand, the constraints with money. as you know, as Jack Bork would say, everything is going up, which is true, but people's pays are not going up as substantially as the increases that are happening today as we see at the pumps. So I think it's a good move in the right direction. As the town manager spoke at your last meeting that I attended, Torrington gives the maximum amount of exemption, and as I was explaining to one selectman on the way up, the $5,000, say your home was assessed at $105,000, the $5,000 is the exemption off of that, making the home now assessed at $100,000 instead of $105,000. So the veteran doesn't get per se $5,000 off in tax dollars, it's off the assessment. So it might mean extra $100 for the veteran. And the exemption in your ordinance as proposed, and I know this is the third meeting, am I correct?
This is the third meeting where it's been discussed. There's some question about whether we'll be able to adopt tonight, however.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, Torrington, as he said last selectman meeting, gives $20,000, the maximum. Barkhamsted gives a little less than this $5,000. So I hope that you move to, you know, pass it, because back in 2016, Candy would remember, Jay Case, as well as Art Melcher, the commander of the American Legion here in town, as well as Neil Hunt and Jay Buttahazy and myself spoke in favor of doing the same thing Torrington did. The board at that time acted not to move on it and kept it the same. So this is a welcome, it's not the best, but it's better than it was. And I hope you do move to adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anyone else like to speak? There'll be another round at the end of the meeting. Moving on to the town manager's report.
Thank you, Todd. First and foremost, members of the Board of Selectmen received, I handed out a sample newsletter to you tonight. Please note that this is a first draft. This is for your eyes. As you requested, this is a draft special edition of the Winchester Wire, specifically targeting information or specifically disseminating information about the infrastructure plan, the roadway plan that we've been developing. I would appreciate it if over the next few days, if you have the chance to take a look, give me your thoughts, let me know what you think I failed to include that really needs to be included, and at the same token, what is included that you think maybe could simply be stated on the website and doesn't need to be highlighted in the newsletter. As much as 4 pages might seem like it should be enough to cover it, nowhere near enough. So I'll leave that for your perusal, like I said, over the next few days, and please feel free to contact me if you have any questions. 508, I'll run through my list as I usually do, and then I'll take any questions that you might have. First, just another update on 508 Main Street. Nothing has changed since we last had a board meeting, but I wanted to let you know I'm still in contact with the Department of Transportation. We're waiting to find out if the line of sight is suitable to permit any type of parking at 508 Main Street. Regardless of whether the town wants to sell that lot, regardless of if it wants to see a parking lot go in there where both buildings currently and once sat, no matter what, there is an interest from the town's perspective and from a potential buyer's perspective to determine whether or not parking is permitted. So this is something that absolutely needs to be done. I'm not sure exactly what is taking DOT quite this long, but rest assured I'm on it. I wanted to make sure, and it will stay on my updates until such a time as that item's resolved. Regarding the budget, just a reminder that you'll see my budget early next week with the March 15th deadline looming. No pressure on me. And with COVID-19, the governor's executive orders on masks have expired, and in turn, our policies here at Town Hall have changed. Masking is not required, but it is permitted and it is encouraged in town facilities. There are still several COVID-related criteria that, if met, and this relates to statewide hospitalizations, local and statewide positivity rates, and so forth, that if they are met, we still have an option to go back to required masking in Town Hall. I'm happy to say that numbers in the state and locally are low. Everything's trending in the right direction. Fewer hospitalizations, fewer positive cases, fewer deaths, and that's the whole goal. If anybody's looking for COVID-19 testing, I know that generally speaking, there are a lot more opportunities to get tested out in the great wide community. But if you're looking for a home test or you need one in a pinch, we still have some at Town Hall. And you can call 860-379-8771 during normal Town Hall hours to request those tests. Regarding the facade and business startup programs, I've already told you that a committee's been formed to review those applications. That group does meet again this coming Wednesday, and decisions are beginning to be made about both of those programs. So we are no longer accepting applications. As of last week, we're no longer accepting applications for the facade improvement program. I'm happy to say that we received over 25 different applications, hundreds of thousands of dollars in requests, and even several times that is being proposed to be invested in our town. And on the business startup program side of things, we are still requesting applications, and we're soliciting applications. If you know someone who's looking to start a business or expand, please come on down to Winstead. We're looking to give you $10,000 to help make it happen, so long as you meet some certain criteria. We do have an RFP out for a financial bond advisor, just to let everybody know. It's been a long time since the town has gone out to bond new monies, and as such, we're making sure that we have the best who are going to be helping us in a cost-effective manner, I should add. Regarding Main Street today, the town did receive feedback from CTDOT about ways that we can expand parking options and ways that we can slow down traffic. We haven't had time between Jim Rollins and myself to sit down and talk about really what the recommendations mean for us and how we can move forward, but we will, rest assured, over the next few days and few weeks, be looking over that. And as we develop an action plan based on that feedback, we'll bring it back to the board to make sure that you have an understanding of what can and cannot be permitted on Main Street going forward, according to DOT. The Sue Grossman Greenway, it seems a moot point. I had originally planned to talk about this update before the presentation occurred, but they were here and they gave a great presentation to update everybody on what is going forward. And regarding union negotiations, I just wanted to let everybody know we have had a change in union representation with individuals who are representing 3 of the unions here in Town Hall. We had one of the individuals within the union administration has taken a new job, and so there will be a little bit of a lag as the union assigns a new representative to our union subdivisions here in Winstead. So there are a few upcoming events to mark on your calendars that I've mentioned, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes?
Just on the upcoming dates, I think we need to start including the budget hearings.
Yes.
Because we have the Board of Ed budget hearing, I want to say March 28th.
Yep.
And then incorporated into our April 4th meeting would be the public hearing on I think that's what Anne Marie and Bruce put in.
Yes. And if it hasn't already been shared with you, I'll make sure that you all get a copy of the calendar right away. I actually thought it was included in
It was
this
included,
packet.
the last
Okay.
page.
Last page, thank you. So yes, please do refer to the last page in your packet for more information about the budget, calendar, and timeline.
Anyone have any questions for Josh?
No updates on the drainage for $1 billion in the infrastructure plan?
I can tell you that I saw preliminary draft of drainage detail sheets just earlier from Public Works. It looks like it was a monumental effort to get that together. I would say, Jim, when do you think we would be able to post those online with the other detail sheets?
I think we want to give it one more look over. You got the draft.
Yep.
We tweaked a couple of little things. I think since you got it, we got to look for typos and that kind of stuff, but they're essentially done. So they'll definitely be on the website by the end of the week, maybe by the end of tomorrow.
Great, thank you.
And undoubtedly, the most detailed and the longest set of detail sheets that have been created so far, simply because there are so many areas around the lake that will be addressed. And luckily, detail sheets have been created for each of those separate areas. So you can really dive in, understand what kind of work's going to be done. And I think it will meet every expectation that you might have had.
And then, just to go along with that, the fire truck, there's specs for that too coming?
Yes, there are specs for that coming.
Josh, are you going to comment on this memo, financial impact of proposed?
Sorry, I was going to touch on all of this information under unfinished business part A, but I'm happy to touch on that now if everyone would prefer.
Oh, okay, oh, I didn't see it under 10A, okay.
Josh, the stuff at 508 Main Street, I know you're waiting for the DOT and all that stuff, but there's been no other meetings regarding the use of that building itself, however, right?
No, nor has there been any other interest expressed in other uses for that space. We haven't received contact from any outside developers or any outside agencies looking to use the space.
So once
and such.
DOT gives you, say, oh, yeah, we could cut a driveway into there, and they allow parking there, what are we gonna do then?
Well, that's really going to be a decision. I would like to go back to the 508 advisory committee that was created, have a conversation with them, and based on their input, I would bring forward a proposal for the board to act on. That might mean tearing down the other building and making a parking lot if it's permitted. That might mean if a parking lot isn't permitted, there's been discussions about trying to have either some green space in there to help make Main Street all the more vibrant, or help create a shared space that different area restaurants could make use of and the public could make use of for sitting, for dining, whatever the case might be. I think there are a lot of opportunities that don't even necessarily have to involve parking and don't necessarily have to involve a building that could be brought to life in 508 Main Street. But without the question answered of is parking permitted, I don't know how we can reasonably continue to market this building, and I don't know how we can reasonably decide on whether a parking lot is in its future.
Well, the reason I raised the question is was it last Thursday, the hearing on low-income housing.
Right.
And there was a lot of discussion about the need in our town to open up some areas for low-income housing.
Yep.
And I guess 508 could be certainly used for that.
With the building existing as it is, the developers that I've spoken with have told me that it would take too much investment up front to retrofit that building. And the sizing of the building inside, I know that some of you have had the chance to walk through the remaining building at 508 Main Street, but not necessarily all. There are 3 apartments that exist upstairs of the lower floor commercial space. And that's the economics of how much one would be able to get in rent from those 3 apartments, and the rate at which the rent would have to be set in order to make back the money that you'd have to invest in the building would not make it affordable for anybody who was looking to rent there.
It wouldn't be a low income.
It would not be low income by any means. I think there's probably a greater opportunity in knocking down the building and trying to sell the lot for some new development than trying to retrofit what's currently there. The sizing just doesn't add up, unfortunately. And it was very much my hope, I think you all know. We went out for an RFP. I put it out quite a bit longer than some of you recommended because I was hoping we'd get that answer. And the bottom line is multiple prominent developers have looked at it and have declined.
Fair enough, thank you.
Moving on to correspondence, does anyone have anything? Boards and commissions, Steve?
Thanks, Todd. We have a resignation on the Recreation Board, but we also have a new person interested, and I think you saw the letter of interest in the package. And so tonight I will introduce the name of Elizabeth Whitney as a candidate for the Recreation Board. And if that goes forward, a term would expire in April of 2026. And so we will begin the vetting process for Elizabeth Whitney. And you see at the bottom of the page, we've gotten a resignation from that same commission from Kim Huber. We'd like to acknowledge her service and acknowledge the resignation.
Steve, are you putting Elizabeth in Kim's same seat? Is that it? Because with the resignation, as we pointed out last time, we want to make sure that they're following the same terms of expiration.
Well, it would seem that that is the case
Yeah.
because of what you just said, the expiration date is the same.
But I didn't know if it was a different term date, or is it actually going to fill that?
We'll have to check on that. It appears that it would be a replacement, but we'll check on that. And also in your package, we did have initially a nomination for the Western Connecticut Tourism Board of Directors. However, we've had some discussion at the subcommittee level, and this is not within our purview to do the appointing. But Todd, Josh, do you want to give us a little background there?
Sure, absolutely. So we have a position from the town of Winchester where we can appoint someone to serve on the Western Connecticut District Tourism Board. So that's the board of directors for Western Connecticut Tourism District. And before this, it was Lara Green Kozlowskis who was serving in this position. Lara recently resigned from the position, and she has recommended, as in stepping down, that our new Director of Economic Development, Ted Schaefer, fill that position. Ted's familiar with the Western Tourism District. I think that the work that he is doing here on the ground is going to help both really educate the Western Connecticut Tourism District on what's happening in our neck of the woods, and it's also going to help us be able to better piggyback off of the work that other towns in the region are doing to promote tourism. I think it's a home run appointment, and the Western Connecticut Tourism District requires that the Board of Selectmen act to appoint an individual to this position. I am not able to appoint this myself. So they do not have a requirement that an individual nominated be a resident of the town. They do not have any requirement that the individual who is appointed be a voter in town. They just have a requirement that the town act to appoint someone. And in this case, I'm recommending that that appointment be a staff member, Ted Schaefer, who is a resident of Burlington, Connecticut.
I have a question. So how many times does this board meet?
My understanding is that the board meets once a month.
So we have very limited hours for Ted as a paid position.
It's true.
20 hours a week.
Yep.
And so once a month, we're going to be taking 2, 3, 4 hours away from this position.
I would guess no more than 2.
But if he has to drive somewhere?
I believe they're holding all their meetings remotely right now. I understand that that could change. I can't speak to that, though.
Usually when we appoint somebody to a board or commission or something like this, it's a volunteer opportunity. And if Ted actually is appointed to this, he would not do this on a volunteer basis, I would understand.
That's correct.
And would there be any conflict of interest with him being a resident of another town? And is that other town also in this Western Connecticut tourism?
My understanding is that Burlington, yes, and that's why Ted is familiar with the Western Connecticut Tourism District. And I guess one could say that about any economic development director that resides in one town and works in another town, and one could say that about any town manager who resides in one town and works in a different town. But the bottom line is that I believe that Ted brings an extreme level of professionalism to his job. There have been several instances where he has already shown great dedication and great loyalty to Winstead and working in its favor. And I think that his background from Burlington is only going to help him excel in the position rather than hinder it.
Well, I don't doubt that at all. I think would make a good appointee. I think the question that Candy raises is, so if he's paid, I don't know, what's his per hourly rate, and he goes to a 4-hour, once-a-month meeting, then that's work that we don't get here.
It's actually an hour meeting.
What's that?
It's actually an hour meeting monthly. It's not a lengthy one, but the commuting time could be, it's an hour-long meeting.
And so your points are all well taken. Certainly, if anybody has a different idea for an appointee to this position, I'm open to it, and I think even Ted's willing to have the conversation. My worry is that if we have somebody who's on the ground here trying to develop strategies for things like tourism, and not just tourism, but a wide variety of things, including recruitment, tourism, marketing, et cetera, and so we have a volunteer who's on this board, it's going to take him a considerable amount of time just to touch base with that person and get apprised of what's happening on the regional level. And that maybe it's not time in the car wasted, but it's another step for him to be able to have his finger on the pulse of the region. And I think that we would be better served by having him in the room.
Joshua, don't get me wrong, I think he's a good appointee.
Sure.
I'm just asking these other questions
Of course.
to get verification about how this would work out. As you say, there's not a lot of volunteers to pick that up.
And the reason that I suggested that he be put into nomination tonight is so that these conversations can happen. I'm not suggesting that he be appointed tonight, but I would ask that you consider nominating Ted, entering him into nomination so that further discussion can happen between now and the next meeting. And if the board so chooses, action could be taken at that next meeting.
So Candace, help me on this. I think, your issue was that we're not required by charter to make
Yeah,
an.
it wouldn't have been on this form. This form is for like the charter boards and commissions.
Right.
So it has nothing to do with that. But Laura was appointed by the board last time. So it's a board appointment, but not a charter one with any terms or anything like that. So it's just not applicable to this form. That's all.
Well, for purposes of further vetting, I would place a nomination Ted Schaefer as a member of the Western Connecticut Tourism Board of Directors.
I'll second.
We don't vote on that tonight, correct, Steve?
Beg your pardon?
We don't vote until it's
We would
appointments, right?
vote the next time.
Yeah.
Can I took there's a person that sent me a snail mail letter today, and I meant to bring it with me, but I forgot it at home. So if we could start in the vetting process, Ellen Babcock for the Water Level Commission.
Ellen Babcock,
Yep,
and did she send you something in writing?
yes,
Okay.
I'll get it to you tomorrow.
Okay, very good.
And what commission?
Water level, because the Water Level Commission has to act this year on the drawdown schedule. And the time clock is ticking on that one.
You good, Steve?
Yeah, that would be it. I only ask Candy, send the letter to Terry, and she can share it with the committee.
Yeah, I'll email it to everybody.
Okay.
I'll scan it and email it.
Moving on to unfinished business. 10A, presentation of infrastructure investment plan, financial impact information.
Thanks, Todd. So at everybody's place tonight, I left behind a agenda item summary, which is titled Topic 10A, Financial Impact of Proposed 2022 Infrastructure Investment Plan. And at the last meeting, it was requested that we draw up as much of a set of scenarios as we could. So I will admit there are at least a dozen variables that can be moved still that we haven't exactly nailed down. And I'm presenting to you only 6 scenarios tonight, so please understand that there are probably 100 more that we could discuss, each of which would be a very tiny variation on the last. But as I go through these scenarios, please note that we're assuming a 4.5% interest rate on the proposed bonded monies. That's a given that we're taking, and that's a number that has been assigned, I should say, an interest rate that's been assigned to our bonds in the past, so that's a point of reference for us. I believe that it's a very conservative estimate because the current market suggests that we would actually receive a lower interest rate, so I'm trying to show you worst case scenarios rather than trying to assume too much. The projections also assume a 97% tax collection rate, as we usually do, and a small Board of Assessment Appeals adjustment in line with adjustments that have been seen in years past. And it's a $500,000 adjustment. So in scenario number 1, and I'm going to read through a number of givens, and then I'll get to the punchline with each scenario. So if we assume that the 2021 grand list number, so that's the grand list we're going to use for the coming fiscal year, that all state and federal revenues remain flat, that no other costs rise, not with the schools or the town, and that the entirety of the $18.3 million is bonded at once, the town would take on approximately $1.325 million in debt service per year for 20 years. In year 1, if you take the variables that I just listed above, it would result in an approximate 0.09 mil decrease with a mill rate of 33.45. That's down from 33.54, which is what we have right now. So someone with a property value assessed at $100,000 would pay $3,345 in taxes. You multiply that by 2 for somebody with an assessed value of $200,000 and so forth. It's a $9 decrease from what someone with the same assessed value pays currently. Scenario number 2, and again, as I told you, these are all very slight variations on each other. So we're taking the given that still the 2021 grand list is in use, that all state and federal revenues remain flat, that the town and school costs rise by $1 million, and that the entirety of the $18.3 million is bonded at once. The town again would take on $1.325 million in debt service for each year for 20 years. And in year 1, given the variables listed above, that would result in an approximate 1.22 mil increase. With a mill rate of 34.76, someone with a property assessed at $100,000 would pay $3,476 in taxes, which is a $122 increase from what someone with the same assessed value currently pays. I'm just going to keep reading through the scenarios until we get through them. There are 4 more. So here we go. Scenario number 3. Again, given 2021 grand list numbers being used, that all state and federal revenues remain flat, that no other costs rise, and that only half of the $18.3 million will be bonded in year 1. In year 1, the town would take on $662,500 in debt service, and in year 1, given the variables listed above, that would result in an approximate 0.96 mil decrease. With a mill rate of 32.58, someone with a property assessed at $100,000 would pay $3,258 in taxes, which is a $96 decrease from what someone with the same assessed value currently pays. Scenario number 4, again, given 2021 grand list, state and federal revenues remain flat, town and school costs rise by $1 million, and only half of the $18.3 million will be bonded in year 1. The town would take on approximately $662,500 in debt service, and in year 1, given the variables, it would result in a 0.35 mil increase. With a mill rate of 33.89, someone with a property assessed at $100,000 would pay $3,389 in taxes, which is a $35 increase from what someone with the same property value pays. Last 2 scenarios here. So this is given the 2020 grand list. That's the year we're currently in. That's the grand list we're currently paying on in fiscal year 22. But given the 2020 grand list numbers being used, that all state and federal revenues remain flat, and that no other costs change, and that only half of the $18.3 million would be bonded in year one. The town would take on approximately $662,500 in debt service in that year, and in year one, that would mean there was a 0.92 mil increase. With a mill rate of 34.46, someone with a property value assessed at $100,000 would pay $3,446 in taxes, a $92 increase from what someone with the same assessed value pays currently. And lastly, scenario number 6, this is again given a 2020 grand list number being used. This is with no costs changing and the entirety of the $18.3 million being bonded in year one. That's again a $1.325 million debt service that we're paying each year. And in year one, that would mean a 1.84 mil increase. With a mill rate of 35.38 mils, someone with a property assessed at $100,000 would pay $3,538 in taxes, which is a $184 increase from what someone with the same assessed value currently pays. You can see there's a quick sheet there to help you understand and reference some of the numbers that I just listed. The bottom line, though, is we can't begin to speculate. We're not at a point yet where we can speculate on which of these scenarios is going to be closest to the truth, to what is going to come. If I had to make a guess right now, I could tell you that the scenarios 1 through 4 are far more plausible than scenarios 5 and 6, because we're not talking about last year's grand list. We're going to talk about the grand list that's coming. And if I had to make a guess, I could also tell you I don't think it's in the town's best interest to bond all of this money at once. I know there are historic interest rates to consider, but certainly with so much uncertainty in the world, I think it's uncertain to say that we would get a lower rate right now than we would a couple of years down the road. And as you can see, bonding everything up front means that there's more of a mill rate impact than there would be if we bonded a little bit over the next, in a few different tranches over the next few years. So there's still a lot to be discussed, there's still a lot to consider, and the biggest variable that we don't know is where the different budgets are going to come in. And we've heard a little bit from the schools. You'll certainly see my numbers next week, and that will help us tailor the conversation a little bit more towards what the impact is going to be on the individual taxpayer. But as you're talking about, we're going from anywhere from a small decrease of $96 decrease for someone with an assessed value at $100,000 up to a $184 increase with somebody's property assessed at $100,000. Are there any questions that I can help answer?
I don't know that I have questions on it. I'm going to guess that the scenario is somewhere in the middle because it's unrealistic to think that there's not going to be any other cost increases in the rest of the budget in the town. So I think it'll be in the middle because we'll have to pay for other things as well. There's a lot of other factors coming into play right now. Interest rates, the cost of asphalt.
Yep.
And then as Jim and Bart have pointed out, that there's so much engineering going on with the ARPA funding that, where are the engineers going to be? So waiting doesn't really make sense because inflation, cost of everything is going to take everything up, but at the same time, there's going to be things that we can't get done all at once. So that doing certain segments of, as you call them, tranches each time will probably be the scenario that'll probably work best for us, except that inflation will also take a chunk out of the future pieces of things. So, and then the other factor in the, our grand list growth, there's two major factors that everybody has to keep in mind, is almost 40% of the grand list growth is from cars. And the inflated values of cars, because the newer cars can't get chips, and everybody's used cars significantly went up in value. When they go back to normal, people drop those values, and they do that anyway through depreciation. What will the gains that we made in this year, how will that be affected also if the legislature approves a decrease in car mill rate and doesn't backfill like they said? Then we have that issue going on. And the revaluation isn't, it will be an equalized mill rate, or it should be an equalized mill rate. And the problem with the revaluation, it's not gonna just project, it's not a grand, the grand list will grow, but if the grand list grows, the mill rate should decrease, and it should become equalized to collect what you would collect in this current year. The problem in this next revaluation is gonna be how much certain neighborhoods grow over other neighborhoods. And even with a decreased mill rate, some parts of town, like I've observed since 2000, there are 3 segments in town. There's one segment that goes up. There's a middle section that stays relatively the same on an equalized mill rate, and then usually the downtown core and side streets drop a little bit in value, where Winchester Center and the lake take the biggest increases of everybody. And if the numbers that I've seen work out, and I've asked our finance director to project these for us, and we need them for the budget, and we need them for this. You know, we just have to be really careful with all these numbers and where things are gonna go. But the good news is the current grand list growth that we have can fund things if everybody is reasonable in requests. You know, if things are done in a reasonable way, that money is used for one-time items, not all operating costs. I think we can get there, and I think we can keep it all reasonable. So I think that will be our challenge, not just in this budget, but this budget has to be able to reflect what happens in the next year and the year after that as well.
Anyone else?
Josh, I was interested in your comment regarding the feeling that you have about going for half of the amount and getting a lower interest rate now, and then taking our chances if inflation increases that interest rate 3 years from now, or when we have to go back out for the second tranche of that money. In terms of understanding that, you're suggesting going ahead with half because you think the cost of doing the whole is just too much to take. Am I hearing you say that?
Well, I think there are a couple things. First, I just want to clarify, this is not a proposal to move ahead with half of a approval and an appropriation and going forward to referendum with half the number, but rather to go ahead and borrow half of the money that is approved after the approval is given.
At an interest rate that we can get today?
At an interest rate we can get today.
In the future, we'd have to go to potentially a higher interest rate.
Or potentially a lower interest rate. And my concern right now is the next 3 months, because we're not talking about borrowing today. And if we were talking about borrowing today, I think it would be a very different story. But we're talking about borrowing 3 to 4 months from now. And with a situation, a pretty serious situation out in Europe, and with a number of unknown scenarios and unknown variables that we can't account for. I already know in the few conversations that we've had with prospective bond advisors that they're saying, well, compared to what it was 2 months ago, you're already looking at a much worse situation. You know, you're talking about almost twice, in some cases, twice the borrowing rate that we could have gotten if we had borrowed 2 months ago. So 3 months from now, we might be talking about back at the historic low levels, we might be talking about the same, or we might be talking about higher. We're in a period of uncertainty. I don't think that anybody 3 years ago could have told you that we would be on the roller coaster ride that we're on with the economy, never mind the municipal bond market, which has been at all-time lows up until the last 2 months. So I think it's a gamble either way. And that's not something that I like to do, and it's not something that I think anybody's very comfortable with. But the reality is, I think Candy put it right. We're in a position right now where inflation is only going to go up. If we wait to have all of these projects, if we wait on approvals, and we wait to start work on these projects, it's only going to hurt us and our infrastructure in the long haul. I think it's just going to be a judgment call when we get past April, when we get past the April and May approval dates, to figure out what's best. Right now, if I had to make a decision right now, I think it makes a lot of sense to borrow half up front and maybe another half in 2 to 3 years. That doesn't mean I couldn't be persuaded otherwise.
And again, if we did that, borrow half now and then half 2 or 3 years,
Yep.
The vote that we're looking for gives us the authorization to do the whole thing. And so 2 or 3 years from now, when we go out for other bonding, we don't have to go through any other.
That's
vote.
correct. Right, so as long as the approval is given by referendum, we would be able to bond up to that amount in any number of tranches that we so chose over any period of time, as long as they're for those projects. It makes, obviously, we want to get them done soon. That's the whole point of this, so we won't wait too long.
Sure, good, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, well, if we did that, we still could not exceed the amount of money that was approved.
True.
So if interest rates, material costs eat that up, then there will have to be changes to the plan.
Right.
Moving on to unfinished business, item 10B. Consider possible act on a proposed veterans local property tax exemption.
And Todd, I want to mention, as we've heard here from members of the public tonight, as we've heard from members of the board in the past, I think there's a general feeling that there may be a positive vote on this. However, I know that this item has not been listed under legal notices on the town's website for a full 2 weeks and more than 2 weeks at this point. It's just been 2 weeks. So for everybody's comfort, I think it might be in order to delay this one more meeting and have a final vote at the next meeting on March 21st.
Move we table this discussion till March 21st.
Hang on a second. If we want to make any changes to this, we need to do it before we,
I would like to have a
Table it.
discussion of it before we vote on it, and maybe we can vote on it 2 weeks from now, but can we discuss some of the aspects of it? Sure. Steve?
Yeah, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay. I'd just like to discuss some of the aspects of it. You want to go first? You want me to?
no, I was just talking about process.
Okay. So, just 2 things. And thank you again. You gave me the explanation I asked for last time about the 5,000. Is there a requirement in this section 20 that we're going to do that veterans have to apply each year? I think there was something online that said if a veteran gets it in year 2022, they have to apply again the next year and the next year after that. And so each year there's an application process. I would like that clarified, and I'm not sure it's clarified in this, this section 20 that would be changing as an ordinance. And from my understanding is, I think there might have been some, just as the assessor has found out, it wasn't always applied the same way. Some veterans had to reapply, some didn't, it was an automatic. And so if we're going to put this into a policy of standardization, what is the requirement for reapplying each year? Because if the maximum income requirement is such that, I think the maximum income requirement was like, you can't earn more than 14,000 or something like that. I think that was in part of one of the earlier qualified papers. Should the qualifying income amount be changed, you asked? And currently it's 14,000 for unmarried and 16,000 jointly for a married couple, meaning that if you were earning $15,000 as an individual and you're a veteran, you can't apply for this. I don't know where that 14,000 might have been 15 years ago. And since money might have changed, maybe that's something we should look at as perhaps increasing a little bit. Now, I recognize that may put a few more people on, but I don't know, 14,000 for a single person, veteran, or 18,000 for a married couple. If they earn more than that, they can't apply. To me, that seems awful low. And I'd just like to have some consideration for that.
I would like to clarify, I did misspeak at the first meeting. You're very right, Jack. I believe I had listed that it was something to the effect of, right, 14,000 and a little bit more than that as the qualifying income levels. Those are out of date, and I didn't realize that. I was reading an out-of-date part of the statutes. So the updated levels, as per the state, is $38,100 is the maximum income level for a single applicant, and $46,400 is the maximum income amount for married applicants. So it is substantially more. I understand that it's still could be considered
No,
low by some standards.
That's a whole lot more than the 14 and 16.
I agree.
So then, does that change yearly based upon factors of the CSG requirements? We're working definitely on that requirement each year.
Right, and I think the nice thing about following the state's maximum income requirements is that anytime the state does adjust it, which they have been doing every year for a number of years now, it's tied to ours. So we don't have to go back in and change our ordinance so long as we use this language.
Fair enough. So if we're following the state guidelines and state guidelines change,
Right.
then that's the reason why people have to reapply each year, because they have to show income from each year to verify I met that level. So it is a reapplication each year.
Right,
I
and
guess you call it a verification. I help a family relative with taxes and stuff, and they always make a copy because they have to send it in. In Torrington, they get a letter
Yeah.
that says, please send us your verified income.
I don't think we're doing that here, though, are we?
Well, I don't know. I'm just saying what they do there.
That's what a policy needs to be. This is consistently being done all the time.
true.
I mean,
And
I've talked to one person, can't remember whether it's changed or not, because they haven't seen anything in several years.
Exactly. And the nice thing about also tying this to the state's policy, the state also has a local property tax exemption. I hope everybody follows that. So the state has a property tax exemption that they're levying for veterans, and then we are having a local option in addition to that.
Yes.
So in order for someone to qualify for this, they would also have to qualify for the state's exemption, and that's a process that is currently enacted here in Town Hall, and we have 15 people who are signed up for that state exemption. So we're in a good position right now to be able to tack this on, to be able to make sure that everybody's aware of what those different reapplication requirements are, and to make sure that there's a uniform policy going forward. And tying it in with the state, again, just to underscore it, makes it all the easier.
And again, I think the reason I'm bringing this up is if we're going to vote on this as a change of an ordinance, we should have all of the facts.
Agreed.
Make sure it's clear, and the policy is completely transparent to anybody who wants to see, okay, how is it all equalized by everybody?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Steve, I'm okay with putting this on to the next meeting unless there's more discussion going on.
I would move that we table this further discussion and action on this till the March 21st meeting.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous? Moving on to new business. Item 11A, refunds as recommended by the Collector of Revenues.
We have 3 refunds for your consideration tonight. 2 of those fall under motor vehicle refunds, and they're both due to certificates of correction in the total amount of $444.37 in the motor vehicle category, and 1 additional refund in the real estate category in the amount of $1,898.19, and that's due to a duplicate payment. So I would ask that the board please approve refunds totaling $2,342.56 to the individuals listed in your packet.
So moved.
I'll second.
Jack's got the second. All in favor? Unanimous? Item 11C, consider and possibly act on impaneling a charter revision commission.
You want to, tell me to go, you want to go? Or do you have a problem with your committee? What was the name? Well, I brought this up at the last meeting, and the reason is obviously because we keep going back and forth on boards and commissions. And I know that this is a good, off election years are the good years to focus on a charter revision. And you have to do them in November so that you have enough voters to cross the threshold that are needed within the charter. So Kevin Nelligan, I know, has a file, at least he's had one for a long time. And when we've done charter revisions in the past, some of those technicalities have come forward. And so I know that Josh will also work with Kevin Nelligan to bring some technical changes to a charter commission. The charter commission obviously doesn't have to just go forward with what we're gonna be taught, what we say, but in the end, that has to come back to us anyway, so it's always good to give the charter commission a charge. It's also good to not complicate the charter revision with so many things that it makes people wonder, like, what's going on and how can you communicate it and how to make everything move forward. So while there's a lot of things that are in the charter that require attention, sometimes a narrow focus helps us to be able to explain it so that people are comfortable with it and things that make sense. I know people have put forward some names, but one of the things that have to happen on a charter revision, as I was sitting here earlier thinking about it, is there should be a balance of voter registration on it. And I'm not sure that all those names give a balance of voter registration. So we may have to hold off on creating it until we can get some balance on it. Because I think the majority of people that were put on by various people are maybe just registered to the Democratic Party. And the last thing I want to do is to have that move forward with just that representation, because I don't want anybody to think that it was just one party or the other party or no party that decided to bring some of this forward. It's important that it be a bipartisan, neutral committee to be able to just talk about the technicalities and not to get caught up in any of that. So that's where I see things as being right now. Josh did a nice job with, we have the timeline in there in order to get it on to November. You'll see in your packets a draft timeline. We did this in 2016 and the next one, which was 2000, I think, 18 perhaps? 18 or was it 20? What was the last?
I don't remember.
Okay, well, anyway,
Yeah.
what we did is, if we create a timeline, it's just easier to follow along, because what has to happen is charter changes have to be to the town clerk by September 1st. And all these dates come from something that was developed a long time ago that we've been following for a long time. So we need to seat the commission, give it a charge, get the report back by June 15th to us, and then we have to, the town clerk has some things they have to do with the draft report to us. We have to hold a public hearing on the report, and then we have to decide to accept or send it back to the Charter Commission by July 18th. And then if it was sent back to the Charter Commission, it needs to come back to us between August 8th and August 22nd. And then we have to determine between then as well as when the charter changes to be voted on. So as you can see, even though it seems like it's a long time away, the timelines are pretty close.
Look at the first point, it says 1/3 hold public office. So you can be a selectman to be on the board?
I'm not sure if that's true or not. I mean, it might be. I didn't look at that part, because usually we haven't done.
No, I know, but it states it that 5 to 15 members balance a political party, less than 1/3 hold public office. So that could be on any board and commission or board of selectmen.
So by my count, there's not a Republican on it.
Correct.
We have until April 1st, so we can table this to the next meeting?
Well, we have to make sure we get the charge to it, so I guess, that's one thing is to find, what's, you were gonna nominate Tom Sullivan, right?
He is a registered Democrat.
Right, so, so besides having the names that we have, we need to find, a couple, either unaffiliated.
Unaffiliated or
Or Republican. We also need to look at the charge, and Josh did a nice job putting this out here when he said, review, consider proposed technical changes to ensure all terms are clearly defined, all sections understood, and that all current practice clearly reflected. That's a big, huge document, so, but I think it should be consolidated down to the boards and commissions and maybe a couple others. And then clearly define the criteria that an individual must meet to serve as an elected or appointed official at the town of Winchester. So mostly not elected in an election for us, but like when we put people on planning and zoning board of appeals, et cetera. Some of that was in an email. If you remember, Candace, you had done an email back and forth with Kevin, one of the last times we had confusion over that. And so that would be something that this charter commission would look at, along with Kevin's recommendations. So unless somebody else wants to talk about any other charges that would go on here, I guess we would use this as the main charge to go to the charter commission. If there's something other people want to put on here, then we should talk about that now, so that when we form this commission at the next March meeting, that we can move the members and the charge all at the same time.
I think that we should have the commission examine moving the town clerk position from an elected official to an appointed one due to the amount of certifications they must have, as well as the training necessary. It's probably two plus years to be certified as a town clerk in Connecticut.
2.5.
2.5. So in theory, that could be after a town clerk's term has expired. We've been lucky as our town clerks have been long-range clerks, but I think it serves the town financially and from a continuity standpoint if we explore having the town clerk be appointed by the town manager instead of running for re-election every 2 years.
And that would be effective in 2023, November of 2023.
Any-
It would run.
It would be
through its
effective
current
We would
term.
take it off of the ballot if it passed this
Right.
election. Yes.
So,
Right, the town clerk's next election would be our
But-
next
That's a good
election.
point,
but we
Tom.
can't cut short, we wouldn't want to cut short
No,
his
I got it.
term.
Got it. Good point, Todd.
What about the fire chief's position? Currently, it is appointed by the Board of Selectmen. Should that be appointed by the Board of Selectmen? Because now it's a full-time paid position? But I don't know what that
No,
impact would be.
he was appointed by the town manager, wasn't he?
Nope.
No, we voted on it.
In the charter,
but
it's the
you
Selectmen.
appointed.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering, I don't know what that impact would be to union. Is he on a union now?
No, he's not.
He's not, so maybe we leave it alone.
Well, I mean, technically, the fire department elected their own chief prior to hiring the full-time one.
Well, they also pick,
They also pick and
Right.
send it to the Board of Selectmen for the Selectmen to, appoint.
Right.
But it's appointed by the Board of Selectmen.
And Candace, just to clarify that point, just because somebody's appointed by the Board of Selectmen or appointed by me, that wouldn't change someone's status in a union.
No, I would
But,
just,
and I know not to bring attention to it, but I think that a very clear legal argument could be made that the position is FLSA exempt, which would exempt that person from being in a union. And that's the position I would maintain regardless of who's appointing that individual, just for clarification.
Well, Candy, to your point, to make sure that there's a balance, how many people could we name tonight? And then we know how many more we need to make to get that balance of either unaffiliated or another party. I've seen only a couple, maybe 3 or 4 names come by. We could appoint 7, and I think in past, I think when you were on the Charter Revision Commission, I thought each member of the Board of Selectmen had 1 nominee.
Well, as it said in the document, it could be 5 to 15.
5 to 15.
You know, but hopefully sticking with.
No, I
those-
understand 5 to 15, but I think we made it 7 the last time.
Well, we did, and everybody was kind of working towards that. So I'd say we need at least 2 others. But it doesn't mean we have to have 7, we could have 5.
I think whatever it is, we need an odd number.
Yeah.
do
But we
need
need,
an
but we need a representation
Right.
from your party, the Republican side, or at least some unaffiliateds. Nothing against who's there now, but
Do you want to name some people tonight, or just wait until?
We'll wait till the next meeting.
Okay.
That way we can have a full list and approve them all at once. And just to clarify on my point, we would not be taking the job from Glenn if we were to change it. We wouldn't be pulling the rug out from under him. He would be our town manager until he.
Clerk.
Town clerk, yeah, he's a town manager.
Town
Town
pull the
clerk.
rug out for me.
Don't want to pull Josh's rug either.
Oh, maybe
be
you could.
interesting, it'd be fun.
Dual employment.
Glenn, speaking, you think this gives more stability to the position?
I do, yeah, I feel pretty strongly about it.
So that every 2 years, you're not looking to change jobs?
It has nothing to do with me at all.
No, but anybody in that position
Right.
could be, right?
Yeah,
Good. That's a good point. Good point.
Okay, do I have a second to table this?
We
Till-
didn't make any motions, so
Oh, yeah,
we just carry it.
okay. Moving on to number 2210-D.
Is this public office?
Would you do it?
Thanks, Todd.
I might ask.
So I'll dive right into this one, and for those of you who attempted to read through the entirety of the Second Amendment to the Tier 1 Long-Term Municipal Solid Waste Management Services Agreement from MIRA, between MIRA and the town of Winchester, I salute the effort. It's very dense, it's very bulky, and what I want you all to know is that after extensive review, after a lot of review and consultation with Don Stein and Mark Hampstead, who is the chair of the MIRA board, after consultation with Kevin Nelligan, I'll tell you a little bit about my understanding and then go ahead and recommend to you that we adopt this amendment today. And simply put, all of this entire amendment, what it's trying to get at is the fact that things are changing greatly at MIRA, and Linda certainly serving on the RRDD1 board. If you'd like to chime in at any point, please feel free. And Todd as well, having a broader knowledge of MIRA's operations likely than I do. But my understanding is that the MIRA plant shutting down, and as they're doing their best right now to make sure that municipalities have the lowest possible tipping fee rates going forward. They want to make sure that we're still engaging with MIRA for our services, even if MIRA is going to be subcontracting some of those services using haulers to move trash away instead of incinerating it, et cetera. And the bottom line is that as they look to use more haulers, and as some of these agreements are coming about in a very uncertain and not very stable economic climate, we have a request from the haulers, really a demand from haulers, to have minimums. So they need to have a guarantee that a certain amount of waste is going to actually require their services and be hauled away. So if we are able to guarantee that, then they are able to offer us a lower tipping rate, lower tipping fee, and that means that the town and RRDD1 will end up paying less for the amount of trash that we're throwing away. So if we are to sign on to this agreement, what we're doing is we are waiving our right to opt out of using these hauling services, which helps guarantee more material is going to be hauled away by these individuals. And by guaranteeing that we have more material that's going to be hauled away, we are able to secure a lower tipping fee. That tipping fee, if we sign this agreement today, will be $111 per ton next year. I believe that the current tipping rate is approximately $106 per ton. If we don't sign this agreement and there is not a consensus among the towns that utilize MIRA, we might be looking at a much higher number than 111. This is a one-year number that they're looking at. As you go through, you can see that there are a lot of variables that play into future tipping fees. But the bottom line is right now, especially within the 3 towns that comprise RRDD1, which includes ourselves, Barkhamsted, and New Hartford, we're trying to get consensus to support MIRA in this effort and to achieve a lower tipping fee rate for our towns. So we already have Barkhamsted that has approved this. They approved this just a couple of weeks ago. And again, Don Stein being the first selectman there and chair of the MIRA board, I really trust his judgment on this. Dan Jerem in New Hartford is, I know, reviewing this, and we have until the end of the month if we wish to adopt this to do so. And we have a request from Debbie Angel as well, as the director over at RRDD1 to adopt this amendment. So all signs are pointing me to recommend to you that we should adopt this agreement, this amendment to the current agreement that we have with MIRA. And we have to do that before March 30th, as I said before. Are there any questions that I can answer?
No, I think Josh articulated that very well. It's a lot of information. The board at our RDD1 has not taken this lightly. We've been talking about this for over a year. We've had input from MIRA, from the haulers, from the department, DEEP, and they've decided, and Barkhamsted has agreed to adopt the amendment to opt out. It's their best option, and I hope this board supports it. We are 3, we all need to, the Barkhamsted, Winstead, and New Hartford all need to be uniform with their decision. So I hope we all can agree to adopt this as the best option.
I have a question. These are because the plant is not sustainable in Hartford, correct? So we're shipping.
That's correct.
So I guess the question is what, and nobody has the answer, right? What will be the sustainable answer in the future, other than all of us not making as much garbage as we're making? If we don't cut down on our trash and what we make, then we will continue to have these kind of issues at more cost going forward, whatever decision they are. So, Todd, one time you brought a whole bunch of things about recycling and whatnot. So I think that when we agree to adopt this, that maybe somewhere in our future communications or on the town website, we start talking about the recyclables. And I know, Candace, you with the styrofoam.
157.
Yeah, the styrofoam containers and all that kind of stuff.
I mean, Cumberland Farms is out of control.
Right. So, maybe we need to start,
Enforcement.
and enforcement and also just, public information around that lack of reducing our garbage is increasing property taxes. Because that's exactly what's happening.
And the state is putting a bill to eliminate styrofoam by 2024. I think that's been in the works for a long time. They're bringing up it again this year. But we still have businesses in town using styrofoam besides, in addition to Cumberland.
Just touch on a couple clarifications. One, I think it may actually be a little cheaper than 111, just by a couple of dollars. I think that's what Debbie told me. So MIRA is contracted with the cities and towns through 2027. This is to eliminate our opt-out. That's basically what this agreement is. And President Kirk announced a couple of weeks ago that the plant may actually continue to burn until 2023 instead of June 30th of this year, because there's so much question about the future, especially with transportation costs now. The lack of tractor trailers to haul trash out of state. Those are some things that are keeping the Mira plant burning after 30-plus years. Yep. We good for a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Can I have a question? Just clarification. Is this something we're going to be signing every year? Or is this going to be through 27? Or do we know how long this particular,
We're signed up through 27.
so,
This is to eliminate the opt-out clause.
and it's signing now, and it's
And
going to
that's
be in effect through 27?
Right.
And we don't have to see this come back again. This will not, this kind of amendment will not come back.
Correct.
Not this particular amendment, but I should just cover Mira and say, you never know what new ideas might come forward in a changing landscape. So
Fair
if they had a new idea, they might bring that forward.
Yeah. But you're signing this one just to amend the contract that goes to 27.
Exactly.
I'll make the motion. I move that the Board of Selectmen adopt the attached amendment to the Tier 1 Long-Term Municipal Solid Waste Management Service Agreement and authorize the town manager to sign the agreement on the town's behalf.
Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Moving on to item E, proposed line item transfers.
It's somewhere back here, I swear.
I'll read it. It's $1,000.
Yes, it is. And actually, Jim, this relates to your department buildings, if you did want to make any comment. But this is a request to transfer, it's an intra-departmental transfer, so it's buildings, town hall to buildings, town hall. It's line 127,851, engineering services to 127,827, maintenance of structures in the amount of $1,000. And it's to cover fiscal year 22 year-end deficits.
I'll move that the Board of Selectmen approve the line item transfer of $1,000 from engineering services, 127,851,0000 to maintenance structures, 127,827,0000, the amount of $1,000.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Linda? Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Citizens' comments? Nick?
Sorry, I wasn't down here earlier when you were talking about the extension of the Sue Grossman walkway, but good evening. Town Manager Kelly, Mayor Orchalowski, members of the Board of Selectmen. My name is Nick Teeling. I live at 224 Torringford Street in Winchester, Connecticut. I just want to very briefly, thank you for considering extending the walkway. That walkway to me and my family represents a lot. During the COVID time, when we were home all the time, there was a lot of uncertainty in the early days. We found a lot of peace walking up and down that walkway. And I think building walkable communities going forward for our community it's an economic driver, it improves property values, and it really builds up the character of our community. So I appreciate that we're moving forward on that project. I really hope the Board of Selectmen does. And maybe in the future consider how we connect it all the way down to Raleigh and the rest of the town. So thank you very much.
Thank you. David, Brian, either of you two? Selectmen's comments and reports?
I was just gonna bring up Ordinance 157, because of the recent legislation that's going out. How do we enforce our ordinances? I mean, I'm curious, when we get into, when we do codify what is our methodology for enforcement? you know, for different aspects of it. How do we define that? You know, when we codify our ordinances, who then determines, who's the enforcement officer?
We've had a lot of discussions about this at Town Hall, and my understanding, and it seems like the wisdom from the past has always been the police enforce an ordinance unless the ordinance specifies otherwise. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, in regards to this ordinance, that there is no designated enforcement agent.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So I believe that it would be the police department.
Would it be possible to just take the ordinance when it gets rewritten or reformatted, and in one of your emails to local businesses, just send it out and say that this is an ordinance that we have here, we're not enforcing it within the next couple months, we're gonna give everybody time to transition, and then we expect to, you know, enforce it.
That works for me.
Can we do something like that? You know, give people, you know, a long heads up, because this, the legislature might approve it too, right?
Yeah, they're putting it forth again, I think 2018, but, I mean, we've had it since December 1st, 1990. So, there's no reason, there are many other solutions that have been there, and, you know, people are saying now, oh, hurting restaurant businesses for COVID. This is all pre-COVID, has nothing to do with COVID, so.
Who else has comments? Jack?
Believe it or not,
Wow. All right, so I will touch quickly on, as we mentioned, or I mentioned at the last meeting. Today, we've now launched the Winchester Moose Campaign. So, the town of Winchester is seeking a name for the roaming moose. The suggested donation is one non-perishable food item per ballot, and the donations may be made directly to the Salvation Army or at the town clerk's office, where you can pick up a ballot, or you can pick one up at various other places, including social media. Recommended items are canned fruit, canned soups, canned pastas, pasta meals, and dried pasta. So the ballots are available at Town Hall, Salvation Army, social media, and I believe Kurt did a story for us on Saturday or Sunday.
name the moose, huh?
Name the moose.
What if it's no longer in our town?
He moved in, Jack.
Hey, I'll donate Moose Munch to the winner from Harry and David.
And we'll probably keep it open till it gets a little warmer, and then we'll have some sort of celebration somewhere to pick the winner. Steve?
Move we adjourn.
Is there a second?
All second.
Jonathan's got the second. All in favor? Unanimous? Good night.